Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer Sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade.
We chronicled the distinct memories of our childhood in our book, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s, which takes you on a notably historic journey through that often forgotten decade. We also want to hear about your experiences during the 1950s. We will feature guests whose special stories of that decade will bring to mind magical moments of reflection, some with tears, some with smiles, but above all, a good dose of laughter.
We would like you to chat with us as we bring to mind the sights and sounds so familiar to that time in history. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Welcome. We are so thankful and so excited and so appreciative that you have joined our 1950s Fun Chat program again, or perhaps this is your first ride with us. Well, I think you will certainly enjoy the guests with whom we are interviewing today. But before we get started and introduce our guest, I would like to point out that in the lower right-hand screen, there's a little red button. It's called the subscribe button. And if you would be so kind to take your mouse and click on that, it would be wonderful. It would just truly help grow our channel. And it does make you aware and get notices when a new broadcast is coming up, which we do weekly. So that would be a fun thing for us to know that you are part of the subscription list for our YouTube channel, the 1950s Fun Chat. Jackie, what's happening today?
Hello. Well, I will begin to tell you that after I mention that little tape running down below. It says www.whilethewindmillwatch.com. Please go there and get lots of information about the book and about vendors and about what's happening with the sisters here. You'll also note that beautiful cover of our book on the upper right-hand corner. It is a sunset of North Dakota, a windmill, and two little girls. And that it pretty much tells the story of what's inside that book. Now, the book includes many memories Janine and I have had in living in the Northern Plains in the 1950s. So we shall begin. We're excited to introduce a friend of ours. Her name is Mary Lidahl. And Mary was born in December of 1947. There she is, her smiling face, in a small town of Plentywood in northeastern Montana. And that's really tucked up there in the corner, 16 miles from the Canadian border and about 20 miles from the North Dakota border. She was raised in the unincorporated hamlet of Raymond, 8 miles north of Plentywood, and 9 miles from the Canadian-U.S. border in Sheridan County. Now, the population was approximately 25 to 30 residents in the immediate town. Raymond had a post office, which opened in 1914, but that has since closed its doors, a small restaurant for just a few years, a bar, her dad's hardware, bulk oil gas station, and 2 school buildings. Farmland surrounded the town. Well, welcome, Mary. We're so glad to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you, too. And my name is pronounced Mary Lidahl. I neglected to tell you that.
Thank you. I guess
it looks like Lidahl, but
yes,
it's pronounced Lidahl.
Thank you.
Very Scandinavian.
Yes. Okay. So, Mary, would you begin by telling us about your school life in the 50s? This is a small community, and so probably there were many children from the surrounding areas. What can you say about that? Just keep going.
Well, the schoolyard contained 4 buildings. 2 of them were the school buildings. The first building was the teacherage, where the teacher lived, and the next building to it was called the lower grades building, which housed grades 1 through 4, and it was a 1-room school. And the next building to it was the upper grade building, which was also a one-room school building that housed grades 5 through 8. And then the building next to that was a larger building, one room also, called the Community Hall. And that's where we had all our Christmas programs.
Mhm.
And where the community gathered for different occasions and events.
Okay.
How many students were in your class, Mary?
Well, I had in my class 4 to 5, and each class was about that same size all the way. It ranged from 4 to 6, 7 kids sometimes, but most of the classes were my class was 4 and 5 kids.
We're coming into the Christmas season. I'm curious to know, what was your Christmas program like? Or did you have what music associated with it? Or what
we did.
treats given out?
We sang songs. We had little skit plays. And one of the things that always stood out to me when I was reading your book was the bag, the brown paper bag of candy that
Yes.
Santa dispersed to us. And so I don't even know who Santa was. He was one of the men in the community.
Mhm.
But the candies we had were the peanuts in the shells,
Yes.
and the ribbon and pillow candies, the square pillow candies, the ribbon candies. And we also had a chocolate drop in there that had a real, do you remember those? The creamy centers?
Right.
They were so sweet.
Oh, I love them.
But I think they were almost the primo candy in that bag. At least they were for me, probably because they were chocolate.
Well, yeah, yes, for me too.
Would they have been called sugar plums?
I don't remember that name, but one of the things that that stands out in my memory about the schoolyard was just across the fence there was a pasture, and it had a large rock pile. And when recess came, we would run to the rock pile, over the fence and over to the rock pile, and we built. We made house plans out of rocks, or floor plans.
Yeah.
You know, we take the larger rocks and make rooms, outline the rooms, and then we'd find smaller rocks, little stones for our lipsticks and perfume bottles. And we'd have flat rocks that we'd set them on. And we would be very perturbed if some of the smaller children in the classroom would destroy our houses.
Yes.
Would the boys go in and do that too?
You know, I don't remember. The boys were playing around the rock pile, but I don't remember them partaking in our housing venture.
So that brings to mind rattlesnakes. Were rattlesnakes ever living in that rock pile?
No, we didn't have rattlesnakes. Unlike Helen, you know, she was raised in the she was raised further south in that area of Sydney and Fairview, but north of the Missouri River, where we lived, 50 miles north of the Missouri, we did not have rattlesnakes, fortunately. I loathed snakes of any kind. And I think I inherited that from my mother because she didn't like them either. But we just had grass snakes, garter snakes. So that was nice.
In that part of the world, Mary, I would imagine that it was pretty chilly in the wintertime.
Yes.
And were there very many hot summer days in that part of the country in Northeast Montana?
I remember hot summer nights when I would go to bed. We had a 2-story house, and it was always, we didn't have air conditioning, of course.
Right.
We didn't even have, you know, I think in those days some people had water coolers, I think they were called, the fans with water in front of them that would blow cool air out. But no, I remember trying to sleep in the heat with the windows open. but we had that hot weather during the summer. But what I really remember are the winter, the days, and a special memory I have is of my dad. Well, our house was between it was our house and the post office, and then and the post office still is running to this day.
That
Because
right.
I sent mail to Raymond, Montana.
Yes.
Well, the information I read online said it closed. That information is
It may have been closed for a temporary time period when they built a new post office in a different area of town. But the winter weather was severe, what I remember, because we would have snowbanks that were as high as our rooftop on our house. And my sister and I could climb up the snowbanks right onto our rooftop. And that was kind of exciting when we were little like that. But what I was going to say about the area between our house and the post office, it was quite a large area. And my dad would take the water hose from our house, connect it to the faucet outside, and run water into this big area, and it would freeze. And it was our town skating rink. And my dad was a jack of all trades. He was a great carpenter, and he could fix anything or make anything. And one winter he built a wooden slide that had wooden steps, up the ladder to the top. And the slide was large enough to have to allow a sled or a toboggan go down. God. But he would pour water on the slide until it froze, so that our slides and toboggans would just slide down onto the skating rink. And that was really fun.
Yes. Did anyone ever get hurt on that? Because
I don't remember anyone ever getting hurt at it. I think I would remember if, we probably fell off our sleds at some point or other, but we didn't ever get hurt. And another fun memory I have of our winter skating is when I was I think I was either 5 or 6, and my sister got her first pair of skates, and everyone was out skating, and except me. I had to sit and watch and just, slide around on my feet on the skating rink. And I think my birthday's in December, so I think my mom and dad decided that they were going to give me my birthday present early. And it was a pair of ice skates with double runners on. You remember those? The double runners?
Yes.
It was figure skates, not hockey skates.
Was it with the double runners? Was that to help you be able to stay upright?
Yes. Yes, okay. It was very good at helping us stand up. Yes. And then as we learned to skate better, then we could graduate to single blades. But that was a big memory for me because, wow, all of a sudden I got to skate.
Yes, yes.
So it was a lot of fun.
Well, Mary, I'm curious to know about your dad's hardware store, because our great grandpa had a hardware store in Goodrich, North Dakota. And interestingly, that is Sheridan County also in North Dakota. Right. But what kinds of items did he sell in his hardware store in the 50s?
Well, it was all the nuts and bolts and screws and nails and hammers and tools, lots of tools. And he also, because that was the only store in town, he had toys. He had a small area of toys. And I particularly remember one special toy that was a skating rink. It had small figurines on it, and it rotated. The skaters would rotate on this skating rink. And I was so fascinated with that. I just stood and looked at it for hours. But he also had a little section for groceries, staples, canned veggies and canned fruits, flour, sugar, coffee. And that was my first paid job, was in the hardware store. Every evening after school, I would come home or go to the hardware and dust and arrange the shelves and make sure that everything was very neat and tidy. My dad was a very neat and tidy person. And that I got paid 25 cents an hour.
Oh, okay.
And I thought I was making a lot of money.
Yes. Well, Jackie and I think that because our grandma Pfeiffer had that same experience in which she was working in her dad's hardware store, and we think that that's where she met Grandpa, because he came with his stepfather from Illinois. They were looking for land to purchase, and so anyway, flirty Justine met Charles, and then they ended up getting married. Did you happen to meet Tom in the hardware store?
No, as a matter of fact, Tom and I met during confirmation or at confirmation. My folks originally lived in a little town called Outlook, Montana, and that was 8 miles west of us. And that's where we went to Sunday school and church. And then when I became confirmation age, would have been 13, I and a friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine in Raymond, our folks decided that we would carpool together to get to town, to Plentywood, to the church in town, and because we didn't have a church in Raymond, and go to confirmation together so that they could take turns taking us in once a week. And so I was in junior confirmation, and Tom was in senior confirmation. He was 15, I was 13, and we sang in confirmation choir together, and so that's where we met. And 60 plus years later, here we are together in Fargo, North Dakota, in our 55th year of marriage. So I think that all kind of worked out.
Yes, wonderful. Did you marry right out of high school?
Tom was a junior in college, and I was a freshman. And he sent his applications into dental school that year to try and start early on applications. And he was accepted to both of them. And so rather than put off going to dental school to wait for his senior year to graduate, he was accepted his junior year. And so we got married, and we went out to dental school that fall. But I'm going to let him tell you about that.
Yes. Well, another. I'm going to go back to the hardware store, and I believe your dad was also the bulk oil dealer for the area. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did he have a delivery truck?
Yes, he did.
Oil and gas out then?
Yep. And I remember when he would be loading up the gas into the truck from the tanks. I remember the smell of that gas coming out of the truck. The hose was going into the truck, and I remember that smell, that aroma of the gas, and it wasn't a distasteful smell or aroma. It's one that I always think of whenever I smell gasoline when I'm filling up the car. I have fond memories. It triggers good memories of days gone by.
I have a question about the business. Did your mother help with the business in any way? And was your sister employed also? Well,
both my parents originally were teachers, and they taught the years before my sister and I were born. And then my grandfather on my mother's dad died in 1944. And my sister was only 2 months old then. She was born in August, so she would have been about 4 months old. But then they moved to my mother's parents' farm, and my dad started farming for them. And it was in 1946 that Mom and Dad bought the hardware store in Raymond and then moved to Raymond. So, and actually I have a little memento here from, can you see this?
Oh, yes. I remember seeing those.
It's the gift that Mom and Dad sent out to all their customers.
Mhm.
And this would have been, let's see, if they bought it in 46, on the back is the calendar, and it's still intact, the total calendar. But this says, on the bottom, it says Claire and Gladys Johnson.
Okay.
And it has a thermometer there, and the thermometer still works. Anyway, I thought that was kind of neat. That
Gifts like that were popular back then, weren't they?
Very much, yeah.
And actually, businesses are still giving out calendars. They just don't include those beautiful pictures,
Right.
or thermometers. Yes,
Right.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
So there's a railroad line that went through Raymond. Which one was it, and what might you be able to tell us?
Well, it was the Sioux line that went through Raymond, and there were hobos that rode the train. And I can't remember if the train came through daily or if it was weekly, or every other day. I just don't remember that. But the hobos somehow a hobo must have started it, came to our house one day, and he knocked on the door, and Mom answered it, and she asked him if she could help him, and he said, could you give me any food? He said, I'm very hungry. And so while he stood there, Mom made a sandwich for him and wrapped it up and gave it to him and sent him on his way. Well, word passes quickly.
yes.
And so after that, every time the train came through and stopped at the depot, here would come a hobo or two or three. And I don't remember. Mom always gave them something to eat. I don't remember when that stopped. Maybe it was when the Sioux line stopped running through Raymond. I just don't remember that. But that was a memory that really stuck out in my mind.
That's very interesting, because my husband's grandmother did the same thing, the Sioux line in Litchfield, North Dakota.
Really.
And I know that, and I should have looked this up, because I know there is a mark that in only hobos know this is a safe house. Knock here, you'll be fed. Do you happen to know what that mark is?
I didn't know about the mark. No.
Okay.
But we had trees around our house, and it was the only house of its architecture. It had kind of a sloping roof, 2-story. Yeah, I don't know what would have been the mark.
Okay.
But that's interesting.
Yeah.
Were you ever afraid of the hobos?
I don't ever remember being afraid of them. No. They were always very gentle people, and it was always men.
Okay.
I just I didn't relate any fear to them.
Did you ever wonder where they came from? How far away did they actually live?
I did. I did. I never talked to them, so I didn't ever ask them anything. I just remember that it was in my preschool and early grade years
Mhm.
this happened.
Uh-huh.
So you mentioned earlier that there was this building that was sort of the social center. So can you just give us some idea of what kinds of social events occurred there?
Well, what I remember, it was the community building, the community center, and what I we had our 4-H meetings there, and Mom was the original founder of the first 4-H club in Raymond, and she was the sewing instructor, and so she taught me how to sew, and now I'm teaching my granddaughter how to sew.
Good for you.
Anyway, the community building, we had many activities in there. The ones I remember mostly are, of course, the 4-H club meetings and programs that we had there. Square dancing. The community had a large square dancing group, and I always thought it was so fun of course, when our parents went, we children always went with them, and we'd sit along the side of the walls on the benches and watch them square dance. And Mom always had such a pretty dress that she had made. All the ladies sewed and made their own square dancing dresses, and the men had shirts matching.
Yes. So are you saying that the children did not participate?
Oh yes, we would dance too.
But, oh, that's good. Okay.
Yeah, oh yes, yes. We always did our own thing, dancing. But
then were you invited to be a part of the square dancing?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Did your mom wear crinoline slips underneath her square dance dress or skirt?
No, she didn't. No, Mom wasn't a crinoline slip gal.
Well, the crinolines made the skirt stand out and swirl.
Yes, they certainly did. Yeah.
And some ladies wore pantaloons. That's the first time I ever knew or saw a pantaloon, was when I would see some ladies.
Yeah, I don't ever remember seeing any of our ladies in pantaloons.
I had pantaloons.
That's interesting. You did?
Oh my. Well, it's kind of a modesty thing, when those skirts twirl out.
Yes. My mother was very modest, so she wouldn't have been showing anything.
Well, Mary, we're getting to the close of our broadcast, but I have a couple of questions for you.
Yes.
First, in the 1950s, can you think of one fun item, one fun memory that's right on the top of your head that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I was thinking about this, and I think the most pleasant memory I have of, and many came to mind when you asked us to do these interviews. But the most prevalent one for me is that we children in the community of Raymond could go outside and play all day long without our parents ever worrying where we were or what we were doing. We had fun climbing trees and playing at each other's homes, and it was a wonderful time. And I especially remember looking up at the sky at night and always seeing the stars in the sky, the bright, brilliant stars, the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, the Milky Way, and oftentimes the Aurora Borealis, beautiful lights. And I have a comment about that, a phrase that a good friend of ours said one time to me when we were reminiscing. She said, "Oh, Mary, those were balmy days." And I just think that I have that running through my mind whenever I think of growing up in Raymond, Montana, because they were very balmy days.
And also, Mary, if there is anything that you feel from your life in the 1950s that really influenced you and was a nudge for you building your character as you became an adult, what would that have been?
My parents were definitely the influential factors in my life and my sister's life. they were faith-based Christian people. And I just give all kudos to them for bringing us up to hopefully live decent lives and giving lives that we have hopefully passed on down to our children and grandchildren. My parents were wonderful people.
How that's just has to really make your heart feel so good and know that you had that wonderful, wonderful background.
Thank
Mary,
you.
you're welcome. This Mary Lidahl, our guest today, lives in Fargo, North Dakota now, but grew up in Northeast Montana. And we are so delighted to have had you as our guest today and to share some of your experiences from the 1950s. And
well, thank you, Jackie and Janine, for asking me, because this brought back a lot of memories that I had forgotten.
Glad to have you.
Yes, yes. And next week, we will come back with another guest who will talk about their experiences in the 1950s. And until then, we want you to think about the swell times of poodle skirts, soda jerks, and cool cars.
But until then, and we do remind you to click on that red subscribe button and the thumbs up button and make your mark. Tell your friends, even your relatives, about the 1950s Fun Chat. We hope that you will join us every week, Monday, 8 Central Time. If you can't, though, at that time, you can view our YouTube program found in the 1950s Fun Chat.
That's right. And you can learn more about the Pfeiffer Sisters, Jackie and me, at our website, whilethewindmillwatch.com. The website was created, of course, to really give folks more insight into the book that we wrote, While the Windmill Watched, A Slice of Rural America in the 1950s. But not only do we talk about our book on our website, but also you learn a little bit more about Jackie's and my history. And some of the best part, especially when we're coming into the gift giving season, is that you can click on a button that says purchase here, and you will be able to order a copy of our book or many copies of our books and give them as gifts or have them for yourself as well. We have included on that website a listing of all the vendors who carry our book, and we are so appreciative of that. So if you have an opportunity to purchase from one of those vendors, that's tremendous. If you can't get to one of those vendors, the NDSU bookstore is our international distributor. So remember, that's whilethewindmillwatched.com. We have had so much fun today visiting with our guest, Mary Lidahl, and we hope that you have had fun as well. So we'll see you next time on the 1950s Fun Chat.
We appreciate and thank each and every one of you, our viewers. Toodaloo.